Okay, so this was created as more of an inspo, so you guys have a visual. So for the last half of the class, or not half, the last quarter of the class, I'll allow you guys to sort of do your own freestyle and create your own things based off the elements we will be practicing today. And this was done on Canson, but we are going to be using a mix of, well, I will be using a mix of Canson for our practice, and then getting into some hot press by Stonehenge. So this is going to be 100% cotton that I'm using here, and Canson is just for the practice. So for colors, really quickly, we are using, and again, if you don't have all these colors, please feel free to use what you have on hand. We're going to be using ruby, carmine, golden, English red, burnt umber right there, sepia, yellowish ochre or yellow ochre, or I just have the ochre, yeah, and yellowish green. Where's yellowish green? Right there. Now it's quite a few colors, but that's because we've got quite the mixture of things happening over here. And one of the things we will be doing once we finish sketching our leaves and we're ready to start using color is I'm going to encourage you guys to try different combinations in your leaves to get some interesting textures and mixtures, mainly mixtures, and then going in and adding detailing to our leaves. All right, so let's begin with a little bit of sketching. So I would like to start by doing, Donna is saying she doesn't have ruby. What should she sub with? Does anyone have any recommendations for Donna if she doesn't have ruby? I would say you could do Madder Lake red as well. Anything that's like a little bit of an orangey red.
Okay, maybe even a scarlet red. Scarlet red is green nose, I have ginger and Newton scarlet red. That might be one. Berlin red, if you have that.
Yeah, I would say just any other red that's a little more warm, but yes, it shouldn't be a big deal because it's, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's start by sketching the mushrooms because I know everyone's excited for mushrooms. So here's typically how we are going to be tackling these mushrooms. How many are, quick show of hands, how many people are actually do a base drawing before painting or are comfortable drawing here? Libby, Ruth, anybody else?
It depends on what I'm painting.
Right. Yes, because typically in most of my paintings, we just start painting right away and there's no real base drawing. But this is a little more structured over here. And then we've got the loose fluffing going on in the background. Okay, this is good enough. So I'm going to break it down really simply for you guys. So the mushrooms are created with essentially three shapes. We've got the top, we've got the first half of the base, and then we've got the bottom. And they're fairly simple shapes. So the first half, the top, you're pretty much kind of doing an umbrella. Now for the sketches, what I've realized is if you press your pencil down and do your sketches, it's harder to get to erase the pencil markings after you've painted. So try and go real light on your sketching. So I'm going to press down a little bit for the sake of you guys being able to see what I'm doing here. So the first shape for the mushrooms is pretty much like an umbrella oval or half a circle at the top. And then we're closing that off at the bottom with a little bit of an oval shape like that. Not oval, like a curved comma almost. So not necessarily a straight line, but like a little bit of curve with the line. Okay, now the beauty about these mushrooms, or mushrooms in general, are you can do them in different shapes. Like, they do not have to be perfect, and I'm not aiming for perfection here. We're still sticking very much with the loose style. So you could have your mushrooms looking even more like a dome, like more like a pointed tip. So something like that. So half an egg, I would say. And then again, we're closing it off by going with a bit of a curved line at the bottom. Okay, now that's the second one. You can also do, I'm going to do it side by side so we can break down the shapes better. You can do one that's a little more wider. So something like this. So you've got a lot of liberty here in terms of, you know, doing a whole bunch of different varieties of mushrooms and shapes and whatnot, and also sizes. So notice I've got 3 different sizes here. If you are planning to sort of group them together, it's nice to sort of have different variations and have a nice little cluster going for you. Now, one of the things I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but one of the things I did when I painted these guys was I used a little bit of masking fluid. I didn't add this to the list of things that we need, but if you guys have this and you would like to do this before we start painting, please feel free to go ahead. I typically like to use the masking fluid with a brush that is not so valuable to me, so like just something that we can add these little rough, rounded, organic shapes in there. We'll get to that a little bit later. And no worries if you don't have the masking tape, we'll just circle around it, so don't freak out. Okay, so the next half of the mushroom is the bottom, and that's essentially like a rectangle, really, starting from the base of the cap, and we're doing a little bit of a rectangle right there. And I'll do them for all 3 of my mushrooms. You can give this base of the rectangle a little bit of a curve if you want, or not. Go with what you prefer in your style. Okay. And actually, one of the things to keep in mind when you're doing this is, and I didn't do that here, so I'm going to erase this a little bit, is instead of doing a rectangle that's like this, let's give our rectangle, say this is the base, a little bit of a slant and then curve, or then do the line. Okay, so that's what I'll do here. For all of them. And then erasing this so I can do the bottom half and you guys can follow along. Okay, so now we've got 2 parts of our mushroom done. We're going to do the base, and so for the base, we'll give it a little bit of a slant, but not as much as or pronounced as the top. So we're just kind of starting a little bit on the inside. We're leaving a little bit of space on the edge here. And then obviously making it a lot longer so we give it more height. Same thing with this one. I'm starting a little bit on the inside, giving it a little bit of spacing. And we're closing it off. And same thing for this one. So now we have our base drawing for the mushrooms. This next part would be involving some of the masking fluid. So if you have some and you want to use it, you can, you know what, let's hold off on the masking fluid still. So this next part, we can just go in and draw in some of these circles to add some nice textures and whites for now. Because I'd like to finish our sketching first and then we go into our painting. So hold off on the masking fluid still, please. So feel free to go ahead and create organic circular shapes like so, and disperse them all around your little mushroom top, and also have them in different sizes because that really makes things interesting to the eye. And it's the white that really makes the mushroom stand out and stark and pretty, in my opinion. So have fun with being random in where you choose to add your shapes here. Can have some sort of off to the side at the edge, maybe a tiny one next to a big one, perhaps like a big one just sort of at the bottom here. So yeah, just be random and have fun with this. I'm going to do it for all three of mine. Okay, so I've done my mushrooms. So this is pretty much all that's involved in drawing your mushrooms before we paint them. I'm going to pause real quick and ask if anyone has any questions so far. And if you do, please unmute and then obviously ask away. And if not, then we will proceed into doing our leaves real quickly. No, that was pretty basic. Everyone is good? Okay. All right, so let's proceed with the leaves. I'm going to keep my mushrooms down here. I'm going to do some leaves at the top here. Now, this is a maple leaf, as Canadians are known for our maple leaves. It's always been daunting to me to draw them because I think in the back of my mind, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in terms of making sure that it's like both the sides are perfect. So this was a little bit of a challenge, but the way I'm going to break it down for you so you can sort of try this out is I let go of the idea of having both sides perfect. And what I did was I sort of just roughly created, so I broke it down in 3 parts. So we see just the half. Let's just look at the half. This is the first part. This is the second part, and then this little protruding bit at the bottom is the third. And I'm going to break that down for you as I do a quick sketch really quickly. And then we just replicate the same thing on the other side. Okay, so let's break it down. So the first part is pretty much, I like to roughly do like the tip and then a little bit of like these jaggedy edges, and then pull it down. So this is your first part. And if you're confident enough and you just want to go ahead and do the mirroring side to it, go ahead and do it. I'm just going to break this down very easily just for people who might find it a little bit complicated to do in the beginning. Oh, let me do it darker so you can see. So I'm not closing the middle because we've got the other bit to do. Okay. Look at this as almost like doing a tree, I guess. Like a very basic Christmas tree, but it's upside down. So that's the first part. So the second part, we kind of end off with doing like a deep line over here for the first part. Then the second part is protruding outward this way and kind of matches the length over here. And then we do more of this jaggedy bit, but we're starting small or short and then ending off tall. And then we're doing the same sort of short bit again going downward. So you could almost look at this as doing something like this. But sideways. This is very, very rough. But again, if you actually look at these leaves, they're not perfect. They're very organic in shapes, but the idea is pretty much the same. They've got the jaggedy edges. There's the tall bit and then the short bits on the side. So this is the easiest way I can break it down. All right, so there we go. So that's the second part to it. And then the third part is literally, you're kind of doing the same thing here, but it's just facing downward. So you see how this is shorter in comparison to this because it kind of dips downwards. That's what gives it that shape. So now we do the same shape outward, and we're kind of doing the same idea, but on a smaller scale. And there we go, we have our first half. Oops. All right, I'm gonna pause right here real quick and ask folks if anyone has had any problems or if you have any questions. Maria's laughing. Anybody? Or we're good? Beatrix, I think Beatrice has a question. If you're having issues unmuting yourself, let me see if I can do it for you. Oh, there we go. You're unmuted. No, I think, oh, you're signed into two different areas. Okay. How about now? Try now.
If you can hear me, my question is, I can't get you full screen. How do I do that?
Oh, what are you seeing?
All of my windows, everyone that's participating, all the screens are the same size. Swipe?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so I think no one has... Sorry, Patty, you had a question?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you when I told her to swipe. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. That's okay. Thank you for helping. Okay, so we'll get back to this then. Okay, so this is the first half. We're going to do the same thing for the second half. If you need instruction, I'm going to give it anyways. Let's just go for it. So we're starting at the tip, and then we're doing our little jaggedy bits to the side. And it's kind of like cascading almost to the shape that you're giving it. Trying to mirror that shape. As long as it starts straight at the top and then slanted to the side this way, going downward, meeting or mirroring its other half, that's good enough. And then we want a little bit of the second part, starting off the same way. And again, we're not looking for perfection. As long as it kind of matches the shape mostly, not so much the peaks that we have, we're good. And there we have our maple. Very, very rough. Once we go in with the colors and we kind of paint it in, it'll look a lot more like this. And then you don't even see the whatever's bothering you about your sketch, if there's anything that bothers you about the sketch. Okay, so any questions at all about the maple leaf before we proceed to doing our acorn leaf? Maria's itching for a question. No? No? Okay, acorn leaf. This was I think this was the toughest thing to draw, but if you're someone who's adamant on getting something, I would say just if you do a couple of practices over and over, again, you're not looking for perfection, but you will definitely get better at doing it. It's just a matter of really studying the leaf and, like I said, breaking it down into 3 parts and then just going for the mirroring effect. Okay? Okay, so the acorn leaf is a lot easier just because, again, it's so organic and it's almost like an amoeba, like drawing an amoeba, but like an elongated one. So let's just do one here. And what I'll do is I'll actually draw in the stem, or not the stem, the vein, the middle vein. Is that what you would call it? I think so, right? Okay. And then this would help me know exactly how much of the length I have to cover. And so we're going to start off, I'm going to put this over here in view so you can see it. Let's put it right there. So we're going to start off tapering like right at where the vein starts over here, and we're going upward. And then we are doing a little bit of a curve, doing hills, but with a lot of rounded edges to it. Almost like waves, I'd say waves. And then elongating it right at the top here, dipping back down, and then you're continuing to do that same thing. And what to keep in mind is that as you're going lower, you're tapering more. As you go higher, you're kind of widening it to give it more width. As you go lower, you're kind of joining back to the bottom. A lot easier than the maple leaf for sure. And this might be a fun exercise to do as well for your practice after you do the class. Like if you really want to go ahead, take a sheet, do these shapes all over, and then just take the colors that we're using and practice mixing it about. I think it would be a lot of fun. And you might get some really good, interesting results at the end. Okay, so that's our leaf. Let's do actually, before I move on to the acorn, anyone have any questions so far? Or you want to make a comment about what you're getting or something? No? We're good? My gosh, am I that amazing at what I teach? Oh, Beatrice. Oh, no, can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself, darling. Okay, hold on. Let me ask to unmute. I think that'll help. There you go.
Okay, I don't want to be pushy, but that's an oak leaf on which acorns grow. The trees grow. The acorns grow on oak trees, but it's an oak leaf.
Thank you for correcting me. Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That is okay. Just because I had the acorn, so I'm like, it's an acorn leaf. It's all good.
Oak leaf, yes.
All right. Did you have a question at all? You just wanted to mention?
No,
okay.
no.
Okay, no worries at all. Thank you. Okay, so oak leaf, guys. Correction. And let's do the acorn now. So acorn, we're breaking this down into shapes. You guys know the first shape already. It is the shape of the top half of the mushroom, or the top first third of the mushroom. So we're doing the wide version of it. I'm gonna do mine nice and big again because of the video, so you guys can see. So it's literally like a little hat. Okay, and then the bottom is closed like this. Again, a little bit of curve, just like we have on the mushroom. And then for the bottom, we start a little bit on the inside and we do a, I don't even know what you would call this shape, but we start with a curve and then we go to a point at the bottom. And then we're reflecting the same thing on the other bit. And that is it. You can have your little bit of a stem at the top, but that is essentially it. Easy enough? Okay. I got Maria's approval, that's good. Okay, so these are the elements we're going to be using to do whatever you feel like towards the end. I think everything else is fairly easy. We've done tons of leaves in the past, but I want to focus more on doing the mixing and then the sketching bit, and just making sure we get that shadowy bits and what sort of interesting results we can get by mixing the colors to create our fall leaves. So even the berries are fairly easy. Once we start our painting, if you guys want me to show you these berries, I'm more than happy to do that. But let's get right into swatching some colors for now. Okay, so I'm going to use the same sheet to swatch some colors, and I'm going to just swatch them at the bottom over here. One thing I forgot to mention before we started was the brushes we're using. So it's mentioned in the workbook as well, but I've got my Princeton Velvet Touch number 4, round Princeton Neptune number 6, and then I've got Zen Art Supplies Miniature number 2. So again, feel free to use whatever brushes you have on hand. This is just what I am using to, get into the nooks and crannies of these babies over here. So for the sake of swatching, I will use my number 6, which is right there. And we're going to be swatching all the colors down here at the bottom. And what this exercise is going to help you with is A, loosening up before we actually begin painting. B, giving us a nice array of our color selections side by side. So this way you can see what you would like to mix together, or, what your preference is really. Because that's typically how I work. Like, I like to go with more of the pinks and the reds and the oranges than the cool colors. Okay, so we're going to start off by swatching the ruby. I'm going to keep this. No, you guys don't need this. And I'm using my palette by Patty. Patty made me this palette. Thank you, Patty. So this is the ruby. I'm just I've dampened my brush and I'm just taking some color and adding it to these little squares here, and then doing little rectangles onto my sheet. Okay, so that's the ruby. The next one we have is carmine, I believe. So some of the leaves have like this beautiful transition from like a warm red to like a pink, and it's just stunning. And those are the ones that I really, really love, just because they're a little more unique in comparison to the orangey yellow brown ones. So here's a carmine. If you look at it, it's a little bit similar-ish to the ruby, but definitely more pink. Right. And then the next one is golden. And again, swatching it right here. I love the combination of the orangey yellow with the pink and the red. Very bright. And then we've got, let me see. Oh, where's my sheet? Oh, here we go. We've got English red, which is like a brownish sort of, yeah, it's more like a browny red. Very, very nice to use in, I guess, if you want to do muted florals. It's very potent from the White Nights set, but beautiful when you use it for like light roses or fall sort of foliage in general. You can see it's nice and dark. So that's English red, and then we have burnt umber. I like using burnt umber and mixing it with yellowish green to give me like a nicer, more wooded green, because yellowish green is not my favorite, but I have a whole block of it and I would still like to use it. So I mix it up with other things. And I always mention this every single time. Alright, so here's burnt umber. We've got a nice array of different browns. Alright, the burnt umber, you can see it's like not as opaque as the golden or the English red. But I think different makes have their colors translate differently. So sepia. Sepia is next. It's almost like a black brown. And this is nice to do really dark areas that really need to stand out, because we've got so many browns here already. Okay, you can see like it almost looks like it's black. So that's sepia. Now we've got ochre or yellow ochre. This is more of a brown with a tinge of yellow. Definitely a fall leafy color for sure. If you want to go ahead and label your colors, you can, just in case you are, so when you're referencing this sheet for later, if you're practicing some more, you have your notes written down. Okay, so that's ochre. And finally, we've got our yellowish green. Super bright green, but works well when you mix it with any of these browns and such, if you're anything like me who doesn't like very bright greens. Perfect. So there we go. We've got all our colors swatched over here. And now on this next exercise, you can either take another sheet. Mine seems to be filled up, or what I am going to do is possibly use the top area here at the bottom. I'm sorry, at the top. But what I want to do is experiment a little bit of mixing. We're not going to mix all the colors, just a couple, and I'm going to ask for recommendations of which colors you guys want to mix. And then once we are sort of warmed up in terms of mixing and what we're getting, we're going to go ahead and start tackling the stuff down here. So anybody would like to sort of chime in and let me know what they would like to see mixed? We're just going to pick 2 colors for now. Let's mix 2 colors.
About yellow ochre and the yellowish green.
Okay.
So you talked about how much you love it.
Yes, clearly. All right, so let's start off with doing a little bit of blending. So just because this is a very basic exercise, we're not doing any shapes just yet. I'm going to start off with, actually, hold on. I'm going to start off with dampening the area first, just a very basic rectangle like we did below. So just like this. And then I'm going to get some of my yellow ochre. It's a little bit contaminated, you can see. My water needs changing with all the colors. Got my yellow ochre, and I'm just going to add it in here. What happens is when your area is damp and you add color, it immediately kind of does a little bloom of color. And it spreads out into the area where the water is. And that is watercolor. So the next thing I'm doing is washing my brush, dabbing a little bit so I don't have too much color or water on it, sorry. Getting some of that yellowish green, and I'm going to go on the other end and add the green. And I'm not going directly into the yellow, but I'm sort of helping the green move along to see if it'll blend in and what sort of results it gives me. Now what it's doing here is my yellow has a lot of color, a lot of water in here. So it's kind of just sitting on top. And this can happen when you're first new to watercolor as well and you're kind of figuring out how to get that nice blend. This is also Canson. It's not 100% watercolor, so that's another factor as well. So you need to be aware, and the more you sort of paint and practice, the more you'll get better accustomed to recognizing when things are not blending and they sort of just sit on top of each other like that. And that's when you need to either go in with a paper towel and do a little bit of dabbing to sort of take off excess water, or just go in with your brush and making sure that there's not too much water on it and just help the blending to happen. And this way you're able to get more of a smoother blend, very lightly. How's everyone doing so far? So that's a nice little pretty blend, very bright. Let's do 2 other colors. Anyone else would like to recommend 2 colors? Or should I just go for it?
How about the English red and the golden?
Okay. So here's, I've dampened my area. I'm getting some English red. And I'm just adding it to the edge of it. Pushing it along. And now I'm going to get some golden. And adding it to this side. And now during this exercise, if you want to take golden or English red, whichever you're using first, and you want to dab it into the opposite end of the color, just to sort of see how that dries off. I kind of did some of that over here. Like I dabbed some of the yellowish green into the yellow ochre, and you can see there's like dots of green here and there. This will also help you realize what you can achieve when you are doing the leaves to get those specific pops of color with either a yellow background or whatever the leaf color is. So here you go, you can see a very dark English red, and then there's little dabs of it into the orange as well, which is typically what the fall autumn leaves look like. They've got little dabs of color. Let me admit Libby in. Okay, let's do, oh, my battery's almost going to die. I will be swapping it. Let me know when the screen goes blank. And let's do one more. And then how are we feeling in terms of warming up to do some leaves and mushrooms? Okay, so anyone would like to pick two colors to mix? No? Nobody? Okay, so I will pick obviously my favorites. I will pick I'll pick some of the ruby. Because we don't have any reds or pinks in here. And then let's pick some of the burnt umber actually. Let's just see what that looks like. So got some burnt umber here. And just get some from the color cake too. There we go. Now I didn't use a lot of ruby, it was quite watered down, but the burnt umber is definitely overpowering, so I'm just going to get a little bit of the ruby from my color cake and kind of just nudge it around. So this is pretty much what we're going to be doing, but in the shape of the leaves that we've drawn or sketched. And this is going to help us get accustomed to not only blending, but also realizing how much color we need in areas, like if we need to dab in more color. All right, so I think the three are good enough unless someone wants to try one more. Did anyone want to see one more combination, or are we good to sort of tackle things? We're good? Okay, this is great. Okay, so let's start off with definitely changing our water. Because mine is dirty, so I'm going to change my water and I'm going to be right back. But we're going to start tackling the mushrooms. So for those who have masking fluid and would like to do the masking fluid effect, you can use this time to sort of just get a little bit of masking fluid in the circle areas here. And the rest who don't have it, that's okay. We're just going to circle around it. Because if you've learned anything from this exercise of blending here, the color only blends in areas that are dampened. So if we skirt around the circles and there's no water within the circles, the color is not going to go inside the circles. So again, this would also be a good exercise for you to learn how cool that property is with watercolor. All right, be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and we're going to, like I said, I'm going to tackle the mushrooms first. And because this is a video and it's going to have a replay, I will do one of the mushrooms with some masking tape so you can see that in effect, and then I'll do another one without. And this way you can have an idea. So for those who are new to masking tape or masking fluid, if you have it in a bottle, it just makes more sense if you put a little bit of it into a container or something, and this way, because the longer it dries off real quick, right? So you just want to make sure you're not drying off the whole bottle by keeping it open consistently. So I'll just put a little bit of this onto a little container. So added some there, maybe that's too much, but there we go. And I'm just using like a cheapo brush that I have. And I'm going to paint in my circles.
Hey, Clarice.
Yes?
A tip that I learned
Yeah?
is if you take dish soap and you put a little bit in a dish with a little water and then put your brush in it first before you do your masking fluid,
Yeah?
your brush is clean. Your brush cleans right up. It doesn't take on and it won't ruin your brush.
Oh, so with dish soap on the brush, get some of the fluid and it's fine?
Yeah. So like, okay, see, I have a dish.
Right.
This,
Yeah.
and I squirted some liquid dish soap in
Yeah.
it, and then a little bit of water, and then you dip your brush in that first and get it good and soaked,
Right.
and then you use your, and then wipe off. You don't want it dripping, obviously, but you want that soap all in the bristles. And
Yeah.
then after you do that, then you can use the masking fluid, and the soap keeps the masking fluid from saturating your brush and ruining it.
Oh, and that doesn't affect how, like,
How the masking fluid works? No, it's perfect. It works great.
oh, nice. Okay, I didn't know that. Thanks for that tip, Libby.
Certainly.
This is what I have at my art desk at all times. I have my soap dish and I have bar soap.
Oh,
Regular generic soap.
right.
I always have this at my elbow. So I condition my brush with water, and then I put it into the soap, and then I go straight into the latex. And then when I'm done, I wet my brush, go back into the soap, rinse my soap, and then I throw the water outside in the yard.
Oh, very nice.
On my drain.
Because I've only ever been doing the soap with the brushes after I use the brushes. And right. And I figured there has to be another way, because I can see people using getting some real nice detail using masking fluid, but I just never really looked into it too much. But thank you for the tips, ladies. This is fabulous. I should possibly add it onto the FYI comments or something like that for this class. Now, one of the things... Sorry?
When I run out of masking fluid, which, I do, and I don't get to the store to buy new, I just use latex. Latex is also masking fluid. So
And
that's something I have out in my play area. So I just grab my latex and go to town.
oh, that's a great tip. Thanks, Patty.
When I get to the store, then I'll pick up a small bottle.
Right. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention as well is, if you notice in my sheet, what I did was, on top of doing the mushrooms, I kind of also went ahead and added a couple of dots on the leaves, and just sporadically here and there. Mainly around the leaves because they're the darkest color. Just to have that nice, it almost looks like there's a splatter of snow or something on there. So for those who want that effect, that's what you would do. So I'm just going to add some around here. And just my acorn. Just so we can see what that looks like. And that's it. Okay, so now we are ready to get into more. Okay, so we're going to start off with doing the mushrooms, and for that you can either, if you've got good brush control, it also depends on how big you've drawn your mushrooms, you can either use the number 8 or use the number 4. Okay. So I think I'm going to let these ones dry. So we'll do the skirting around the circles over here. And for the top of the mushrooms, again, I think these, you can do them in like different colors if I'm not mistaken. Like I've seen orange, I've seen red. There might have even been pink, I'm not quite sure. But we're going to mix some of the ruby. And what's the other color that we have? And you can either use some of the sepia or the burnt umber to get like the slightly darker edges, okay? But in very small tones. So for instance, the base should always be the ruby. We're doing the ruby colored mushrooms. And so if you just mix some color and we go right in and start painting. And skirting around for those who are not using the masking fluid. And you want to push all the color downward. Another exercise that, or another technique, if you want to try this, is to dampen certain areas first and then go in with the color so it can spread without you having to sit there and sort of paint around things. But when you see me do the painting for the bits that have the masking fluid, you'll see how much easier that is because you're just painting over it without really having to skirt around items or shapes, rather. Giving you the best of both worlds, really. Now I think these Princeton Velvet Touch brushes, this is not Velvet Touch, this is Neptune, but the Velvet Touch brushes have a really nice pointed tip, and I think those would be perfect for something like this where you really need to have like a skinny point to get into the nooks and crannies and kind of really mind where you're painting or where the paint goes. Now the key to this bit when you get the shading in is to make sure that the areas you're adding the shading in are still damp. So what I've done is my dominant areas are going to be to the edges of these mushroom caps. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of my sepia, just a tiny bit on the tip, and I'm going to mix it onto the side here with some of the ruby. And then I'm going in, I'm adding light little dabs of that. And I want to take advantage of the fact that it's still damp, and so it gives me a nice little blend and like a gradient sort of effect. You might want to add just a little bit to get just a hint of a darker red, or you might really want to go in and add more. Feel free to experiment. This is the time where you kind of really get down and fearlessly try new things and figure out or learn watercolor better. And then also learn what you prefer in terms of your style and the results you want to achieve. Because we all have different likes and dislikes. So you see how that immediately makes everything pop just because we've got it super light at the top and then darker at the bottom. However, it is not meant to be that light at the top, so we are going to get more of the ruby, mix it up, and then just add some more at the top. Okay, so how are we doing so far, guys? Anyone have any questions? Maria smiling, trying to hold back her smile. We're good? Okay. So I've just added the shadow basically at the very bottom and a little bit to the edges and the sides. And that's the effect we were going for. Kind of like what we're getting here. Notice that I didn't add too much. I kind of really went in here and added a lot more. So again, it's a preference. Let's do the bottom half or the middle portion of it. For that, I believe I have used umber, burnt umber, a very light and muted version of burnt umber, because majority of it is technically supposed to be white. So what I have essentially done is done a very light wash of a light umber. So I'd say more of a 10% color, 90% water sort of bit. And just done a light wash over it. Okay, so here we go. And very loosely, so if you're leaving white space in there, that's totally fine. Like if you want to just go in and like roughly paint this color in, leave some areas with the white space, and you want to push all the color that is collecting downward. That makes sense and that works. And then what we're going to do is using this time, again, we're doing a lot of this damp overlay layering bit here. We want to make sure that the tops of these bits are slightly darker so they give you that nice shadowy effect. Kind of like what we have going on here. And at this point, if you want to mix in a little bit of the sepia in with your burnt umber, just to get a slightly darker shade of the brown, and that's what I would recommend. Or you can just go slightly higher in your mixture of it. Burnt umber, I mean, like if you go 20-80, that would also work. Now it's not giving me a blend right away, but you are still able to see that shadowy effect. Not getting that blend because, again, my water or my first layer of color has dried up. So I'm just going to work with what I have over here. And so I'm just lightly kind of doing this little bit of a jaggedy sort of effect below. But I want to make sure that the dominant impact of this color is mainly at the bottom right there. I'm going to introduce my number 4 as well. This is where, like, when you're doing shading, sometimes you'll find yourself using 2 brushes just because of time. So for this bit here, like, we've got some of that color and I would like to sort of have it seamlessly mix into this bottom half. So I'm taking my number 4 and with just water on it, I'm lightly sort of dragging and pulling down the color I've just laid. So now I've got this nice, and let me see if I can zoom in so you guys can see. There we go. Now I've got like this jaggedy effect happening over there. And then I want to make sure that, again, it's a bit darker at the top. So taking a little bit of that brown, I'm just lightly dabbing. And I'm getting a nice, beautiful blend. Again, the blend is happening because this area is damp. So you can see how suddenly we've got this pretty shadow effect. Okay, now we want to do the same thing for this half down here. So we're doing what we did in the beginning, using that first brush, mixing a little bit of sepia with some of that burnt umber. And then keeping the number 4 handy to sort of go in and add the little lines and the blending. And I'm just lightly sort of adding just below this area here. And then going in with the number 4. I'm lightly dragging down the color. And this is also giving us that nice stripy texture that most mushrooms have on the bottom half. And then getting a darker shade of that brown. While this is still damp, I'm just dabbing it just so. You can add some at the top as well. And then just sort of blending in to get that nice linear stripy effect. You will find when you use the 100% cotton paper, you won't have to do as much blending, because unless you want the textured look that way, because it'll remain damp longer and you will get that nice blend without having to go in and help it blend with another brush. All right, so any questions so far? We're good? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna zoom on and do this one right here. And we're doing the same thing. So I'm gonna recap what we've done, but just without pausing too much. So getting some of the ruby, I'm gonna go in and paint this whole mushroom without a care in the world, because we've got the masking fluid over here. And I'm pulling all the color downward because I would like the color to accumulate at the bottom half of this mushroom, or just the base of the mushroom rather. So all the way down, making sure the base is properly painted. And then now at this point, I'll go in with a second layer, yes, one more cover of red, because I'd like it to be really nice and red. So just really painting this in. Okay, and now at this point, I'm getting some of my sepia. Let's get a little bit of sepia, mix it in with the ruby. And I'm going to add, while it's damp, I'm adding a couple of strokes of that in and around the bottom base of the mushroom. Maybe a little bit at the sides over here too. It can become a little bit of an obsession trying to get the right amount. So you've been warned. So I'm going to leave this as is, and we're moving on to the bottom. So this time I'm going to do the umber, just a very light muted version of it, and I'm just painting the top half, so the middle portion of it first. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you're you're doing these in chunks, if you're painting these in chunks, and the top of your mushroom, or the cap of your mushroom is still damp and you're going in to paint this portion, if you touch the top, you will have a little bit of color bleeding into the bottom. So this is where your paper towel comes in handy. So just take your paper towel and lightly dab. I don't have too much bleeding, but there was just a little bit. And then now I'm going to take my number 4, get some of that sepia, and I'm just adding a little bit of that to the top portion while it's still damp. If you want more of a greenish tinge to your mushroom bases, I would suggest adding a little bit of the yellowish green in with your sepia, just a tad bit, and you can get like a nice green tone. We're going to go ahead and do the bottom now. Same thing to keep in mind for the bottom. If it's damp at the top and you're going in to do your shadow with the sepia, what's going to happen is it's going to bleed into the top half. So just keep that in mind. I went in with a lot of sepia for this portion, and so it's a lot darker. How are we doing so far? Any questions so far? Anybody, or we're good? You think we're good? Okay. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to leave this one for now just because of time. We're at 12:18 already. And let's move on to doing our leaves. So for the leaves, let's tackle the what's it called? Maple leaf first. And same concept that we've been doing with the mushrooms, the whole mixing and, you know, while it's still damp, going in with a second color. So if you've got the 2 brushes handy, this is where we're really going to be using the 2 brushes. So I'll use one for the base, and we'll paint the leaf in sections. So I'll tackle this top half first, and then you'll see me go in with a second color and sort of have it blend in. And we're using techniques that we did with the blending of our basic shapes at the top here, also some that we did here with the mushroom, and we're making it work for the leaf. And then our end goal is to have something that sort of looks blended on this level, right? So let's start off with the golden. I'm going to do golden. And what you could, I think, again, another approach to this would be if you dampened this area first and then went in with a second brush and added the color and allowed the color to kind of seep in. But let's just start off with this, and then we can use that technique for the next one. So I'm kind of lightly going over and painting my leaf based on the sketch. And again, pulling all the color downward. And then I'll take my second color and I'm going to let's get some of the ruby. And I'm going to start from where I've painted some of the orange or the golden already, and I'm just pulling down the color. And at this point, because areas are still damp, if I want to give a little bit of that blending at the top, I'm going to add some here and there. Let's just see what we can get. Getting some more of that orange, golden. Let's go and pull it down all the way to the bottom. And for now, let's get some of that English red as well. Let's see what happens now if we add that in as another color. Notice how I'm kind of adding some dabs of that in the upper area as well that we have already painted. But the orange or the golden is our dominant for this. Okay, going back to get some of that English red, really adding it to some of these ridges here, trying to get a nice blend. Get some of that orange happening again, so I've switched back to my first brush and I'm really going and covering majority of the area so that I can go in with this and kind of get some pretty bleeds with some of the other colors. So getting some of that ruby again, the second brush, and let's just add some ruby to the absolute bottom here. I got some directly from the color cake, that's why it is so bright. And then finally, if you're just kind of lightly touching up certain tips of the leaf, make sure things are lining up well. Just adding a little bit detail here and there if you feel the need to, and you are pretty much done. I'm just blending out some of this ruby here. Okay, so then finally one last thing to sort of really bump up the quality of your leaf is going in and just with your second brush, nice pointed tip, adding the little veins for it. Now it helps to add these when it's semi-dry, not completely wet or not completely dry. And that's mainly because it'll give you a nicer, softer look. However, you can always make sure that the amount of color you're using for this bit is a little more like a 70-30% ratio, where it's 30% color, 70% water, so you're not getting a dark look on it. So here we go. I'm just gonna add that in. See, that's a little bit too dark, so I'm gonna dip the tip of my brush in water, mixing some color onto the side. And you can use either the English red or the umber. The umber might be a better option actually, because we don't want it to stand out too starkly. And then just give it some very thin looking vines. And you don't have to do it for the whole thing consistently. It could just be a couple here and there, and then you kind of leave it. I will give it a bit of a stem here. There we go. All right, any questions about what we did here? Did I go by too fast? Are you having problems getting that seamless kind of blend in with the colors? I want to hear from you guys.
I'm doing good. You know me and my leaves. I'm not the best at them, but hey, I'm having fun.
Listen, there's a lot to learn here besides just painting leaves. It's also the blending. It's also the, you know, like proportions and stuff like that. So don't worry, Patty.
No, not one bit. I'm just going to town.
Anybody else? No, we're good? Okay, awesome. So let's move on. Let's move on to doing the oak leaf. And for this, I had dominantly used, I threw in some of that yellowish green. I didn't want to use it, but I said, let's use it because I'm so partial to other colors and impartial to this one. So definitely some yellowish green. I have some, does it look like ruby? Yeah, I've got ruby in here. And I've definitely got some sepia in there as well, along with English red. So those are the colors we're going to be using. So let's start off with, because I wanted it to be a little more stark and stand out more from the orangey yellow of the maple leaf. So let's start off with doing or mixing. Again, we're, by the way, tag teaming with 2 brushes. And we'll start off with using the, did I say we're using umber? No, we're using English red. Okay, so let's use English red for the base. So I have a very diluted version of it on here, and I'm just going to cover up the whole space. At least the top half. And then go in with my second brush to add little shocks of our other colors. So remember, the key is to make sure these areas are still damp when you're going in with another color. So let's go in for that, the green. And I'm going to add some of the green. And sometimes you'll see like the color just like stands still. It doesn't blend. Just help it along with your brush, obviously. And this is why I like portioning or sectioning off the painting, because if it gets dried up too quickly and we lose out, we're not going over with more paint, because what happens is then you're layering, you're getting into wet on dry, and it's going to dry off with all the marks of your brush. Strokes, that is. So adding some of the ruby. Actually, I don't even know if I used any of the sepia in this, because the red or the ruby with the yellowish green gives you kind of like a darkish look. So it may have been that blending into one another. I'm going to get some of that darker English red. and really paint things in. So I'm getting a little bit more of that green and just adding it just at the bottom here, just to sort of make sure it ties in with what we have happening at the top. And there we go. Okay, any questions so far? No, we're good? Okay. Let's move on to the acorn. And for the acorn, I've literally used only the sepia, like really painted it in at the top and then really done a very light version of it at the bottom. In fact, I've painted the bottom half just like I did the mushroom caps, where it's a light background and then going in and adding some dabs just so it gives a darker edge to it while it's damp. Okay, so let's just do that. So I'm going to get my sepia, mix some of that up, paint it in. In hindsight, if you want to use more of the umber, burnt umber for your bottom half instead of using the sepia, that also would work. Okay, so now I'm going to dampen this area and do a little bit of the burnt umber for it actually. So yeah, it's a very light wash that I'm doing. It's almost like 10%, maybe even 5%. Mix in a little bit of the burnt umber with a tad bit of the sepia, and I'm just going to add some dabs of it around. And then let's give the stem a little bit of a paint as well. And there we go. So we're done doing all of these. Anyone have any questions so far? Anything that I have not answered? Okay, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to just finish this off real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, okay. So I think 1 minute is up. How are you guys doing with everything so far? Everything is good? Are we feeling like this was a good enough practice? And FYI, do you want to do a little bit of a mini setup by yourselves? Like maybe pick one leaf, one set of mushrooms or a mushroom, and do something real quick? How are we feeling? Remember to unmute when you guys are...
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Let's go for it. I'm going to erase my my masking fluid, and where's my eraser? Oh, here we go. Or maybe just rub it off because I can see color getting onto my... Okay, I'm going to keep this over here in view just so you guys can have something for a inspiration. So I've done a base drawing, and I'm actually going to go and do my little loose leaves first before I start painting, because the masking fluid stuff is still drying up. So I'm going to extend this by 15 minutes just so we have a little more time to sort of paint. All right, we've got about 5 more minutes left. And no need to rush, because I'd much rather you guys take your time and work on your stuff instead of rushing just to finish it in time for the class. Okay, so that's it, guys. It is now 1:17. I know everyone's having fun. So I will not interrupt you guys too much, but I will wrap up the class and then you guys can most certainly continue painting. How does everyone feel really quickly? Any comments, any questions?
I had a lot of fun. I definitely need help with practice my maple leaves.
That's a fair statement. Anybody else?
Yeah, my maple leaf looks like a baby chick.
Like a baby jet? Oh, I
Chick.
can't. Oh, baby chick. Oh.
I had
Okay.
trouble with my oak.
Oh yeah? Oak with your oak leaves or the
It,
okay.
it didn't seem to blend like I wanted it to.
Well, remember the blending part is the more you do, the better you get. So, and we are working with some pretty bright colors. So if you blend too much, it could get pretty muddy and dirty looking. Like I messed up here. Mind you, in person it doesn't look too bad, but on camera it looks like a burnt leaf. So don't worry. We all we're all in the same boat. Ruth, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say I didn't get to do any painting just because I'm up and down a lot, but this is very helpful. I'm looking forward to joining some other classes that you'll offer.
Oh, good. Thanks, Ruth. Too bad you couldn't get to paint with us, but I know you said you're looking after your parents, so you would be up and down. So yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, and I like to actually just watch and then replay.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining, Ruth. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else?
Mine just says iPad. This is Kimberly Cordova.
Kim, you made it. Tail end of the class, but you made it.
I had my alarm set for 6:45 so I could get up and get everything ready to go, and it didn't go off.
Oh no.
And I'm like, I woke up at 9 my time, which is the class starts at 8, and I'm thinking, oh no. Oh well. But I have been sketching. I have made 3. Well, I'm on my second, almost done, fully done with my second sketch for
good.
my Christmas cards.
Oh, nice. Okay. Great. Well, I look forward to seeing that. Maybe you can share that in a private message or something, Kim. That would be lovely. I'd love to see your sketches. And yeah, too bad you you missed the beginning of this. We did a bunch of sketching for sure, but in the replay you should be able to catch that. Okay. All right.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else?
You know me, I have trouble filling my white space. I leave much.
Had a good time, Clarice. I really enjoyed the class. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear this, Trix. You're most welcome. All right. Okay, then on that note, sorry, someone wanted to say something. Maria.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm usually not that excited about fall colors, but I do love the palette you put together.
Oh,
I think
the sun is right there. Oh, very nice. Yeah. Okay, yeah, look at that acorn leaf. You got some good blendings in there. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Good job, guys. Okay. Well, I just want everyone to know that, you know what, like, no one was born walking, so please do not feel like Maria said, oh my gosh, my maple leaf looks like a chick. That's okay. Try it again. Do not be discouraged. Yeah, look at my acorn. Sorry, my oak leaf. And feel better about it. All right. Okay, well, on that note, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's a Saturday. We've gone over by like 20 minutes. So thank you so much for joining. And remember, the replay video should be available early next week. so you guys can review and practice. And yeah, just keep in mind, if you have any questions at all, just shoot me a message and I'd be happy to answer, just in case something comes to you after the fact. But in the meantime, yeah, continue doing your composition. And, you know, if you can, send me so I can see what you've done, or tag me if you're going to be posting it online, and share your thoughts as well. All right? All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a fabulous day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.